Greetings, class. The purpose of this video is to go through what we did on Monday in class. And on Monday in class, we were talking about information system controls. We were not talking just about internal controls, although they are internal controls. This is one type of internal control. And so what we need to do in this video is just for those of you who were not able to be there, I'm going to go through some of the things that we talked about. So number one, we have four primary objectives that we need to meet when we're talking about information system controls. Number one, we need to make sure that the right people get access to the system, that it's physically protected, that we keep the systems running. So I left a word out here, running. Anyway, then that there are changes to the system, basically as updates to make those system, to improve the system essentially, or protect it in some way to address some weakness or risk. So when we talk about one of the things that we have to talk about here are frameworks, which basically is a series of concepts to help us define how we are framing our discussion about internal information system control. So we start with this idea of COBIT as a framework, COBIT. And COBIT was basically designed by the Information Systems Audit and Control Association, and it originally stood for Control Objective for Information and Related Technology. That's what that's about. Now, you might be familiar with COSO. That's another framework. And it's a larger framework in that it entails both systems and procedures in a business. So we have basically two types. Well, COSO addresses internal controls as well. And these are processes of the business or procedures, but it also addresses governance in a business, which is tone at the top. Now, when I say tone at the top, what I mean is how ethical is the business and how accountable is the business. So when we talk about COVID, there are basically 5 domains, and that's what these are domains. And when we say a domain, this is an area in the business where these domains operate, or an area in the system. So we've got to evaluate, direct, and monitor, or EDM. And we're going to be, in this domain, we're concerned with stakeholder needs and IT strategic options. What options do we have? The second domain is align, plan, and organize. And here we're interested in risk, security, and budget. So when we say we're aligning something, we're planning and organizing, we want to make sure that we are addressing risks, security, and that we are meeting our budget. The third domain, and that's the APO domain. The third domain is build, acquire, and implement, or BAI. And this domain really is assessing the IT requirement and change. What is their IT requirements? And the number 4 domain is deliver, service, and support, which is DSS. And that's basically going to be the IT support for projects, but also end users and any process controls that are needed. The fifth and final domain for COBIT is monitor, evaluate, and assess, which is MEA. And basically in this domain, we are interested in meeting the organization's goals or targets or objectives and any external regulatory requirements. So this is going to be focused on how we deal with objectives. Are we meeting objectives? Are we dealing with external requirements appropriately? Unlike these other ones. So basically, when we say, and I want to go back to this build, acquire, and implement, I may not have made this clear. We look for the IT requirement and we make changes based on that. But I did not address the acquire piece of this. This is going to be, when we look at IT requirements, we're going to consider additional technology and perhaps software or other tools. Okay? All right. So one of the things that we need to think about in this framework is basically how these fit within a business organization. So if we look at a business organization, there are going to be some areas that we need to address. First of all is governance. And governance is basically how good we adhere to what we need to. So one of the big concerns here is realizing the risks that are out there, resources, optimizing those. In good governance, we're going to attempt to optimize the resources we have, and then we're going to be transparent with stakeholders. For management, and this is a management focus, so we look at governance, which is an overarching focus, but management is going to deal with all of the domains in COBIT. Okay, remember we went through the domains in COBIT. So there is a management component for each of those domains. So for APO, for example, we are going to be concerned about managing data. Right here, we're going to manage data. When we look at build, acquire, and implement, BAI, our primary focus is managing changes. When we look at deliver, support, and services, we're primarily looking at managing operations, which includes dealing with continuity and end user processes. And then I guess I did write this one here, managing or monitor, evaluate, and assess, MEA. With this fifth domain, we have 4 domains under the management. The 5th domain is governance. But anyway, we have these domains, and the MEA domain is what we're looking at as a system of internal controls. So we're going to manage that system of internal controls. Okay, so that's kind of a framework as to how information system controls are designed. So number one, we need to identify different types of controls that we have when we're dealing with systems. And the number one control that you'll see most often is access controls. And these include the logical access control, which means you authenticate that the user is who they say they are. So when you're looking at access controls that are logical, there may be some authentication through a dual authentication purpose like Duo, or application like Duo. And then when we have physical access controls, we want to control who comes and goes. So in this case, there may be somebody who is security or some system where they limit access to certain areas. Another item here when we're looking at these accesses is that we are in the right role, and the right role is using the right stuff. In other words, not every role gets to use all the stuff in the system. So we have a user role, but we have to decide what permissions that user will receive. And it's always based on the function they're performing. So if the user is an accountant, they need to be able to have access to the accounting system. If the user is in another department like sales, they need to be able to have access to the sales system and pricing and all of that, and then so on, based on the department. The top access is an administrator, and typically users are not granted administrator roles. Mostly the people that do this are going to be the tech support or somebody who will be able to help you with trouble with your system. So when we talk about tech support, they're going to be the administrator, and they have permission for everything. So basically, when we're talking about access, it's sort of like when we're talking about OneDrive. When you set up a file on OneDrive, who has access to that? You designate or define who gets access, and do they have the ability to edit the document? If I'm writing a document with someone else, they need to have access to edit it. And then we look at multi-factor authentication is another way to support basically who somebody says they are, basically logical control. And a biometric may be used as well. And when we say a biometric, we're talking about fingerprint. There have been eye scans, facial scans, that kind of thing, facial recognition. So those are some of the things that we have there, all right, when we're talking about roles for users. Ooh, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, and then related to users, we have this little diagram right here. And what we're talking about here with users, we have a couple of options that we may need to perform. So if a user leaves our company, we're going to terminate their account, basically remove their access. But if somebody transfers to a different department, they may need approval for different kinds of accesses, and so, or access to different programs. So we may have some revision of the user's permissions in order to get to those other programs. So we update their access. So we want to look at risks here that we might have. The first thing that we have to do with system controls like this is to maintain and protect them, the system, and basically we need to account. For an example, when we're talking about risks, we want to maintain the system, but in accounting, one risk is physical inventory. We need to be aware of what those things are or where they are, and that they are accounted for. The best example I used in class was the cath lab that was not there in the hospital I was auditing. A cardiac cath lab is where they do cardiac catheter procedures. Apparently, a doctor who was in charge of the area eliminated the lab, but didn't tell accounting. So when we're talking about that, when we're talking about maintaining and protecting, and accounting needs to be able to account for whatever the inventory is or what's there. That's part of it. So we have different levels of importance. We have different levels of security related to this. One level, it's a critical issue, critical problem, is who has access, basically, to the website and the app. So it's critical that we have in this system our customers having access to our application, to our website, to the information that they need. So when we look at that, that is a critical, because if we don't have customers looking at our information and being able to record it properly, or basically order materials or products or services, we're going to be in trouble. A moderate risk. So this is a critical risk right here. Now let me just restate it a little bit. I wasn't really all that clear. When we talk about a critical risk, we're talking about a point at which somebody can get in from the outside and damage our system or the way it functions. A moderate risk is somebody internal, like human resources, human resource services. For example, in human resources, they may be dealing with some of the confidential records, of course, but they will also deal with basically things that are not they're not going to be communicating with outsiders. So that's a very moderate risk. A low risk, then, that we're talking about here is employee benefits area, which basically they're just going to be dealing with employees and what their benefits elections are. So when we look at risks in conjunction with user access, we want to prevent these kinds of risks from happening. Number one is employee fraud. That's where an employee takes from the company. Number two is malware attacks, where somebody basically baits us with a file and an email that we don't know where it came from, and it turns into malware, and it's malicious and attacks us. Ransomware is like malware, but in that case, what you do is if you open the attachment, it locks down your system, and they basically hold your data for hostage, and they require you to pay a ransom amount, which is significant. This did happen recently with a hospital, and they did pay what the ransom, whatever they asked for the ransom. But again, that's another issue. A data breach is a little different in that somebody has been able to get access to the data in our system. They may have gone in and taken some of the data. They may have copied it and used it in a way that was not meant to be used. So this is what we covered on Wednesday. I'm going to do another video here shortly to cover the balance, but this is what we did on Monday, and again today, Wednesday, we'll address the rest of that, and we'll have a few more things. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care and have a great day.